They were enjoying their summer vacations when the most feared assassins attacked them. The assassins were trained, but they forgot that this is no ordinary couple. Welcome back to Paramount Recapped. I don't have many subscribers, but your single comment is a ray of hope to motivate me. So, the movie kicks off with a peaceful setting. A married couple, Joe and Laura, are enjoying a quiet vacation somewhere out in the Polish countryside. Seems pretty chill, right? But here's the twist. These two aren't your average tourists. Turns out, they used to be elite American spies. Yeah, serious cloak and dagger types. But they ditched that life to try and build something more peaceful together. While they're enjoying breakfast outdoors, a couple of French travelers who are also vacationing nearby spot them. They strike up a friendly convo, typical small talk about where they're from and what they do. The French woman mentions she's a hospital doctor. Naturally, she asks Joe and Laura what they do for a living. Not wanting to blow their cover, Joe and Laura pretend they run a small store, totally downplaying their real past. Later that morning, back at their lodge, Joe brings up the idea of joining the French tourists for a trek around the countryside. But Laura isn't feeling great and decides to sit this one out. She tells Joe to go ahead without her and promises to stay put. Joe agrees, but just in case, he sneaks a pistol into his gear. Old habits die hard. The group, including Joe, the French travelers, and a local guide, sets off into the woods. Meanwhile, somewhere nearby, two CIA operatives are flying over the same forest in a surveillance plane. But out of nowhere, the plane gets shot at and crashes into the trees. Joe hears the explosion and, being the ex-spy that he is, immediately heads toward the noise to check things out. Back at the lodge, Laura sees thick black smoke rising from the forest and instantly senses something's gone wrong. She quickly sends a message to Joe using a satellite phone. Meanwhile, Joe and the others stumble upon the crash site. It's a total mess. The plane's in pieces, and the crew, well, they're all dead. Shot execution style. Joe and the French doctor take a closer look and realize this wasn't just a mechanical failure or some freak accident. Somebody clearly wanted that plane down. Joe recognizes the pilots. They were CIA, just like he used to be. That's when things start getting really serious. While checking one of the bodies, Joe finds a hidden hard drive. The doctor protests, saying it's not his to take. But Joe insists it's probably got something important on it. What they don't know is that the plane's radio is still working, and it's been broadcasting their entire conversation straight to CIA headquarters. So now the big boss of the CIA knows Joe has the drive, and he's not happy about it. Back at Langley, or wherever the CIA chief is holed up, he freaks out. That hard drive apparently contains some seriously damning evidence, like career-ending, maybe even life-ending stuff. He demands to know the crash site's exact location. And when he learns it's deep in rural Poland, he knows things are about to spiral. Back in the forest, Joe tells the group they need to get out of there fast. The place isn't safe anymore. But before they can retreat, a group of heavily armed mercenaries shows up. Their leader, a guy named Orland, steps forward and grills the local guide about why they're in the area. The guide plays dumb, saying they're just tourists who stumbled upon the wreck by accident. Orland doesn't buy it. He zeroes in on the French doctor and starts questioning her. When she refuses to answer, he kills her on the spot. Just like that. Brutal and cold. Then he turns to Joe and demands to know if he took anything from the plane. Joe plays it cool, lying through his teeth even though the hard drive is literally in his hand. Orland stares him down, trying to sniff out the lie, but Joe stays calm and collected, enough to convince Orland to back off. While Orland and his goons start searching for the wreckage again, Joe seizes the moment. He jacks one of their jeeps and takes off. The escape doesn't go as planned though. The vehicle runs out of gas. But Joe doesn't miss a beat. He snatches a motorbike from one of the mercenaries and rides off into the forest. Meanwhile, the story shifts to another character. Chester, an older man still working as a government agent. Unlike Joe, Chester never retired. The CIA boss calls him up and gives him a mission. Find Joe and bring him in along with the hard drive. Chester hesitates. Joe's been out of the game for 5 years, and it seems strange that he's suddenly a target. But the CIA chief insists that Joe stole something extremely sensitive. He even promises Chester double his usual pay if he gets the job done. Chester, ever the loyal soldier, agrees. He heads to Poland right away. Back in the woods, Orland is furious. Joe's escaped, and now he thinks he's hiding somewhere nearby. He starts shouting threats into the trees. warning Joe that if he doesn't come out, he'll kill everyone back at the lodge, including Laura. Joe hears every word. Panicked, he calls Laura using the satellite phone, warning her to be ready. Laura doesn't waste a second. She taps back into her old spy instincts, grabs some weapons, and gets ready for whatever's coming. She then checks in on the guests in the neighboring rooms, urging them to hide under the beds. It's just in time, too. 3 of Orland's men burst into the lodge, but Laura's ready. She takes them out quickly, no hesitation. Elsewhere, Chester finally shows up in Poland. He checks into a remote hotel, and in a cold, twisted move, he tests out a new poison he's created by slipping it to the poor guy who gave him a ride. As Chester walks away, the driver collapses and dies. Chester smiles to himself, satisfied that the poison works flawlessly. Joe eventually makes it to a quiet little shop in a small village. It's deserted, so he breaks in just to get some rest. While he's there, he picks up a landline phone and calls the CIA boss. He demands to know what's on the hard drive that's got everyone so riled up. The boss gives him a vague answer, claiming it's top secret government data and urging him to give it back. But Joe isn't buying it. He knows the truth. He's seen enough on that hard drive to realize it exposes a whole bunch of dirty secrets involving the CIA's leadership. And Joe's not the type to sit on that kind of information. He tells the boss he's planning to go public with it, to make sure no one like them gets away with abusing power again. The CIA boss starts to panic. He traces the call and immediately notifies Chester of Joe's location. Then he gives a green light, take Joe out and recover the drive, no matter what it takes. Chester doesn't flinch. He heads straight for Joe. Back at their hideout, Joe reconnects with Laura. He admits that taking the drive probably brought a lot of heat down on them, but he did it for a reason, to stop corrupt officials from destroying more lives. Laura doesn't hesitate to back him up. She's tough and more than capable of handling herself. She tells him to stay strong and to be careful. Just as they end the call, there's a knock at the door. Joe opens it to find Chester standing there, calm as ever. They greet each other like old friends, sharing a few words like they're just catching up. But the tension is thick. Chester then casually asks the question they both know is coming. Did Joe take the hard drive from the wreckage? Joe tries to play it cool and tells Chester that Orland, the guy leading the mercenaries, already got his hands on the hard drive. But Chester doesn't buy it for a second. Calmly, he tells Joe to just hand it over so they don't have to get into a messy fight. Trying to smooth things over, Chester pours 2 glasses of alcohol and slides one toward Joe. Joe, suspicious as ever, pushes the drink aside and says he's good. Instead of arguing more about the hard drive, he changes the subject and asks Chester who this Orland guy really is and why so many people are chasing this little piece of tech like their lives depend on it. Chester eventually spills some tea. Turns out Orland is actually working for Russian intelligence. Yep, the Russians want that drive because if they get it, they could use the info on there to shake up the US big time. Joe raises an eyebrow and asks Chester if he really believes it's about national secrets. Or is it more about covering up dirty dealings of high-up government folks, including their boss? Chester shrugs and says he honestly doesn't care what's on the drive. He just wants to get paid and wrap this thing up. Back at the lodge, Lara's in action mode. Orland's men have taken a bunch of tourists hostage, holding them inside. Quietly, Lara sneaks to the 2nd floor, silently takes out one of the guards, and tells the frightened tourists to stay put while she goes to handle the rest of the bad guys downstairs. A few of Orland's men are down there, just hanging out, drinking, and joking around when suddenly they hear a loud thump. They rush to check it out and find one of their guys on the ground. Lara had tossed him from above. Orland's right-hand man freaks out and tells his crew to check upstairs. But as they make their way up, they run into another dead comrade. That's when things really heat up. Lara ambushes the rest, taking them down with impressive skill. Eventually, though, they manage to surround her and pull their guns, forcing her to give up. But Lara's not out of tricks. She's got a small knife hidden in her hair. After taking out a few more guys, she ends up facing Orland's main guy one-on-one. He manages to overpower her, worn out from the fight, and straps her to a chair. With a smug look, he starts interrogating her, mocking her for acting all high and mighty like most Americans do. Lara calmly responds that she's not even American, she's German. She then adds that she and Joe used to be feared worldwide as top-tier secret agents, pretty much unbeatable. When the guy hears Joe's name, he connects the dots. Lara's Joe's wife. He demands she call Joe and tell him to give up the hard drive. Lara says fine, but she needs her satellite phone back to do it. When he hands it over, she quickly taps a code in, and boom, the room erupts in an explosion. Meanwhile, Orland and some of his remaining goons manage to track down Joe and Chester to an old house where they've been hiding. Apparently, some local villagers saw Joe and spilled the beans. Orland tells 3 of his men to storm the place and take care of Joe, but they hesitate. They know Joe isn't some random guy. He's dangerous. Orland, furious that they're scared, kills all 3 of them on the spot. Inside, Chester realizes they're completely surrounded. He groans about some back pain and asks Joe to help him stand. As Joe reaches out, Chester jabs him with a syringe. Coldly, he tells Joe it's poison. He's got only 24 hours unless he gets the antidote. Joe, clearly pissed but trying to stay calm, says he'll hand over the hard drive after they deal with Orland and his squad. Without wasting time, Chester cracks a window open and shoots at a nearby power line, cutting off all electricity. Orland's gang starts blasting away at the house, and then tosses in a smoke grenade. The place fills with thick, choking smoke. While the bad guys charge in, Joe and Chester gear up for a wild shootout. It's chaos. At one point, Chester lobs a grenade and blows open the garage. But in the blast, Joe loses his grip on the hard drive. Chester grabs it quickly, punches Joe, and makes a run for it, leaving Joe behind to face the rest. Now seriously outgunned and weakened by the poison, Joe tries to fight his way out. During the scuffle, someone throws another grenade and it explodes, hurling Joe across the room. Dazed and injured, Joe can barely move when Orland finally shows up, gun drawn. Orland looks at him and asks why he didn't just give up the hard drive in the first place. Joe asks why it's so important that people are literally dying over it. That's when Orland admits the truth. The hard drive is packed with evidence that could destroy some seriously high-ranking officials in the U.S. government. He actually hates those guys and wants the same thing Joe does, to expose the corruption. Orland even confesses that he shot down the CIA plane to steal the drive himself. Joe, now seeing that Orland isn't just a hired thug, apologizes and tells him Chester ran off with the drive. He suggests they team up to go after him, especially since Chester might be heading toward the lodge, where Lara could be in danger. Orland agrees, and although it's awkward, the two form an uneasy alliance. As they make their way toward Chester, Joe calls the CIA chief and straight up tells him he's going to blow the lid off all his corrupt dealings. The CIA boss just laughs and says Chester already has the drive. And by the way, Joe's got less than a day to live because of the poison. But Joe reveals that he didn't get the full dose, so he's still kicking. That doesn't sit well with the CIA head, who immediately orders a drone strike on their location. Soon enough, 2 armed drones are flying through the skies over the countryside. They lock onto Joe and Orland and open fire. Joe floors it, dodging the blasts as best he can, but the drones keep coming. The chase gets wild, and eventually their car crashes off the road. Luckily, both men get out with just some bruises. They regroup and take down one of the drones in a fierce fight. But just when Joe lets his guard down, Orland pulls a gun on him. Before he can shoot, though bam, a shot rings out. It's Lara. She shoots Orland, saving Joe. But things aren't over. The second drone swoops in and launches another strike, causing a huge explosion. Despite the chaos, Joe and Lara manage to escape, though both are badly hurt. The next day, Joe takes Lara to a quiet lake nearby to help her recover. She's feeling weak from a wound she got during her earlier fight, and Joe tries to patch her up and calm her down. Slowly, she starts feeling better. Out of nowhere, Chester shows up. Joe, confused, asks why he's still here. Wasn't he supposed to be on his way back to the States with the drive? Chester says he started feeling strange and weak. That's when Joe tells him the truth. He wasn't the one who got poisoned. Chester was. Joe had slipped the toxin into Chester's drink earlier. He then pulls out the antidote and offers it, but only if Chester hands over the drive and agrees to help take down the corrupt CIA director and his cronies. Chester realizes he's got no choice. He gives in, and just like that, an unlikely trio, Joe, Lara, and Chester, joins forces to take on some of the most powerful and dangerous people in their world.